All right, welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I'm Chris Clements, and good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are.
Wherever you may be.
Merry Christmas.
If you're listening to this before Christmas.
If you're
Merry
listening to this before
2020.
Christmas, which I'm assuming will be maybe before Christmas.
Well, it'll be released
I feel like we were
Christmas.
just here, and I decided to, wear my USC sweatshirt.
This is following up on our college football discussion.
You know, that was so much fun. I just had a blast.
Well, I'm glad you
doing
did
it.
because I don't know that much about
I
college
did.
football.
I had a
Alex
great
was
time.
gone that day, so we couldn't ask him about Wisconsin, but, whatever. Thanks for being back, Alex.
We'll see what happens with Wisconsin.
So, man, so much to cover. But let's start with the ongoing saga in Washington. The House is now out. They've adjourned.
They have adjourned.
They've adjourned for the year.
Okay.
The Senate is in.
Because we know they did so much work this last week.
So much work.
You
Schumer has
was what they did so much work on? Student loans. Because Sandy Cortez was ranting about how much money she owns in student loans.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know she still owed it.
Yeah. Like $17,000.
Well, I mean, I didn't pay off my student loans until I was in my late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, that's a whole.
But
that's
she
an
thinks you
entire
shouldn't.
topic.
The government should just let it all go.
Well, then what about the guys like me and women like me who, not me, men and women who paid off their loans?
I know.
Oh boy, that's a big topic.
That's a whole nother podcast, probably.
That might even be an entire podcast. Somebody should do a whole podcast about the fiasco of college education,
Of federal student loans and college education, and how it's your taxpayers basically subsidize
everything.
Kids to go to college, learn liberal ideology, and then enter
Infected
the
into the
enter the
workforce.
real world. And it takes another 10 to 15 years before they really start paying taxes to understand how the world works.
Yeah.
At least,
Okay. Well, maybe.
we digress.
So Washington, House is out, Senate is in. Schumer up until today or yesterday was basically saying we're going to get BBB, Build Back Better, done before Christmas.
Or otherwise known as Build Back Broke.
Build Back Broke.
That's what we've been hashtagging it on Twitter.
Right. But he didn't say that yesterday or this morning. He's now slated a bunch of nominations to go to the floor of the Senate. So I think it's not going to happen until after the holidays, if it happens at all. And that's in, two parts. Manchin and Biden have met a couple of times. Those conversations have not gone well because Manchin wants everything to be scored at 10 years. And Biden's like, no, this will be 1 year, and that'll be 2 years, and that'll be 4 years. And Manchin knows that.
Well, educate our listeners a little bit about Build Back Broke.
Well,
I mean, and the process that we're seeing. It's a reconciliation.
It's a reconciliation, which means that the reason they're using reconciliation is reconciliation only requires 50 votes plus 1. 51 votes. Doesn't require a filibuster proof.
And it must be purely related to the budget.
The budget.
If it's not related to the budget, then the Senate parliamentarian tosses it out.
Right.
And that's been a big controversy.
Right. And one of the challenges is that not even all the titles of this Build Back Better have been reviewed by the parliamentarian. So that's another reason.
I heard as of yesterday, there are still committees trying to write their parts of the bill.
Exactly.
And had no clue what
and they
doing.
can't really write it until they have a deal. And Manchin's saying there's not a deal because I'm not happy with the cost, because Lindsey Graham and the Republicans in the Senate asked CBO to score everything at a 10-year cost.
As if nothing would sunset.
Right.
So the biggest criticism, I believe, of Build Back Broke has been some budgetary gimmicks whereby these new federal entitlement programs that they want to implement then sunset within a year or 2 years or whatever, which keeps the cost down.
Right. But as everybody knows, as Ronald Reagan quipped, the closest thing to eternal life is a government program. So we know these things are not going away.
Maximus.
I mean, when's the last time you heard about a government program that was dismantled? I know there have been some at some point. I'll have to spend some time thinking about it, but it's not readily.
We still
on
have
top
the
of
Department
mind.
of Education, and Republicans and conservatives have been talking about getting rid of that for years.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jimmy Carter.
Right. So the Manchin position was score this at 10 years, and then it obviously, when the CBO came back, Congressional Budget Office came back, it scored at over $3 trillion. And as we all know, he was comfortable with maybe $1 trillion, maybe $1.5 trillion. The score, according to the way the Democrats have maneuvered, like the sunsets, scores at about $1.7 trillion. And then they realized that that's not going to happen before Christmas. So they said, "Oh well, we can get this voting rights thing done. We can change the rules on the filibuster to get the voting rights bill passed." And that's when our own home state senator Kirsten Sinema said, "No, I'm not for changing the rules on the filibuster." Holding steady on the position she's taken from day one,
From the beginning.
Doesn't
And
matter
taking
what
all
it's
the
for.
slings and arrows.
Yeah.
Well, and Democrats, to their credit, were able to carve out this, a filibuster push, I would say, on extending the debt limit, where a deal was reached by Leader McConnell and Chucky Schumer, where they would not need 60 votes to extend the federal debt limit, and they extended it for over $2.5 trillion with a
2.8
simple majority vote.
Yeah, they did the way they did the process there was they passed a temporary law that allows them to pass a debt ceiling with the simple majority.
Yeah.
And McConnell allowed that to happen. Some people are unhappy about that.
No Republican voted for that.
Yeah, I think that.
Well, but the logic then becomes for the Democrats. Well, if they'll do it for that, then then we can try to push for filibuster reform when it comes to voting rights.
Right. Well,
and surely we can peel off some of our fine compatriots, from the great state of Arizona to do such a thing.
So they thought, but it turns out that they can't because she's staked out a position.
Kirsten Sinema is smart. She can count, and that's what I appreciate about her.
The thing that remains fascinating to me is why isn't Mark Kelly just hugging
Where is
her?
Mark Kelly?
I don't know. We still don't know.
Has anybody seen Mark Kelly?
Maybe he's waving to us from the International Space Station. I don't know.
Alex, have you seen Mark Kelly? I haven't seen him. I think his time at the International Space Station actually did something to his brain or something.
I think he spent more time at the International Space Station than he has
in Arizona.
In Arizona, in public, I don't know, whatever. But just never see the guy.
He hasn't really taken a position on much of anything.
Nope. No, he hasn't.
Yeah.
There's a few things here and there.
He took a lot of credit for the infrastructure bill, or tried to take a lot of credit for the infrastructure bill and all the great things that'll happen in the state of Arizona for it. But other than that,
but I don't think negotiated that bill? That was his senior senator.
That was Kirsten Sinema.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable.
She kept her guns on that as well.
It's pretty remarkable that she's the senior senator. She's been in office for 2 years. That's kind of cool.
Well, and she will address herself as the senior senator.
Will she?
Oh, yes, she will.
No,
when I am the senior senator from Arizona. I've heard her say it.
Well, I mean, she is. It's a fact.
Yeah, well, I know, but it's interesting that
can't begrudge her that.
So with Build Back Better, she's also held. I mean, got to give her credit. She's also held fast on no tax increases,
right?
Which kind of blows up the entire funding mechanism the Democrats had for Build Back Broke.
Oh, but it's a zero revenue.
It's all paid for.
It's completely paid for. There's no impact on revenue. Wrong.
$3.5 trillion to the deficit if all those new plans are not sunsetted.
Right.
Is what Lindsey Graham found.
So therein lies the problem for the Democrats. So here we'll go into 2022.
An election year.
Election year, and then it becomes a little bit more dicey because then you've got both Senate members, but also because whatever the Senate does is going to have to go back to the House.
Yeah.
And now you've got a bunch of Democrats in the House, a bunch of whom are very worried that they're going to lose the majority, and they should be.
Which history shows that that's probably in the cards.
Most likely.
Don't want to get ahead of our skis.
Most likely. I mean, and It's
Don't
a
want to take
perfect
anything for
storm,
granted, I
right?
would
It's a
say.
perfect storm against the Democrats, though, because you've got both historical trends of the first midterm of a president's election, where they historically lose seats, but it's also the first election after redistricting.
Yeah.
You know, every 10 years you do redistricting in states that have more than one member, and redistricting doesn't look very good for Democrats across the country.
No.
There's Illinois and New York are going to help Democrats, a couple seats in each of those. But places like Texas and Georgia, North Carolina,
Maybe even the great state of Arizona.
we don't know. The maps aren't final yet, so
No.
we'll know
They're getting there.
next week or two.
Yeah, they have to be solidified, finalized in the next
So
week or two.
So Build Back Better gets the Senate deal, then has to go back to the House, and who knows? Can Nancy Pelosi break enough arms to get it to pass? Because her margin of error is only like 4 votes.
Yeah, I'm sounding like a broken record on this, but I just believe that while Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema have been taking all the slings and arrows of both the press, progressive activists, whomever else, you had a nice tell last week with Senator John Tester from the great state of Montana, joined with Senator Manchin in voting for a bill that would block employer mandates for employer vaccine mandates.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a great tell, because if he's for blocking mandates on vaccines for employers, he can't be really comfortable with this massive spending increase with inflation, really real inflation at double digits now.
Right.
You know, producer price index for the last month was over 9%. Inflation for the rest of us was over 6%. But when you add in all the different variables, now they're saying it's over really collectively 10%. We're at 14% in some sectors. It's a mess. And increasing government spending to the tune of 1.7 or 2.1 or 2.5 trillion is not going to help inflation. It's not going to help the everyday person.
No.
It's going to make things much, much worse.
Yeah. So there's that. So we'll wait and see. We probably won't be much to talk about that until we are back in 2022. So we'll update.
Well, in a couple of weeks, we're going to do our
news then.
2022 predictions.
That's right.
We've decided. So
That's right.
So maybe we'll have some
We'll
predictions
definitely
around
have
that
some
by
predictions
that
around
time.
that. Yeah. There'll be even more to talk about.
Including, does Joe Manchin, as he enters 2022, stay in the Democratic Party?
Yeah, that should be a good prediction for us to make.
Yeah.
If you have ideas of things that you'd like us to do a prediction on, feel free to contact us so that when we do that episode.
And
at
you
the
can
end
do
of the
that
year-
on our Facebook page.
Yeah, Facebook page. You can do it on Instagram. You can on the website.
You can tweet at
email
us.
I think we have an email.
Yeah. Info
Info at lightbeerdarkmoney.com.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. All right, topic number 2. Boy, I don't know which way to go, but I think I'm going to go with COVID. So
Okay.
we have this is the study out of Israel.
Yes.
I mean, it was a huge study. It's
Yeah.
covers almost the entire population.
Israel,
Because they have the
scientifically has
highest
been,
vaccination rates across the world.
Yep.
And it shows that having gotten COVID is the best defense against the disease. In fact, there are a
having
number of
gotten
studies that
COVID,
said-
surviving.
Yeah, surviving.
Which, again, COVID has a 99% survival rate.
If you've gotten COVID and recovered,
Yes, recovered.
you're not going to get it again.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who say, "Oh no, I got it again," or "I had friends got it again." There was a FOIA request into the CDC that says, "Show us a case in which you have 2 instances of COVID in the same person," and they could not produce any documentation of that.
Yeah, that's pretty telling.
So
it just goes to their fear mongering.
this
on
whole
all this.
thing is just
Especially
led to
surrounding
such
the Omicron.
Omicron. Well, the
variant.
Omicron is just
Or as you like to call it, megadeath.
megadeath. The problem is it's got no bite because it's very unlikely to kill you.
But this morning, it was all about Omicron. All about, more lockdowns. You see what Great Britain's doing with lockdowns. And California, new, face mask mandates for inside public places. It's just crazy.
And I mean, we'll have to do a whole episode on face masks and how insanely ridiculous that whole thing is.
Well,
they don't work.
The CEOs of the major airlines were up on Capitol Hill yesterday, and they were making, Gary Kelly, the CEO of Southwest Airlines, made a strong case. In fact, I have the quote right here. I think the case is very strong that masks don't add much, if anything, in the air cabin environment. It is very safe and very quality compared to any other indoor setting.
It's no question. They've got a massive
Because of the HIPAA filters that they've installed on all their airplanes. And yet the most uncomfortable experience that we all have to endure right now is wearing a mask on an airplane.
Well, when you think about it,
from
the time
reason.
you get into the airport, then get on the airplane, land, get off the airplane in the airport. I mean, if you're going like, we do to D.C. or Florida or whatever, that's 5 or 6 hours.
It's a long time to have a mask on.
Yeah, it's insane.
And then to be berated
for no good reason.
To be berated by the poor staff who are just
doing their job.
Just doing their job. If you have it just below your nose, or you're eating and don't put it back on, and they're on you about it. And it just creates all these issues for both the staff and the airline.
The entirety of COVID has just created a mass psychosis across the country, across the world, that's driven by profit. This really, I've concluded that this is driven by profit by the pharmaceuticals, that they are absolutely suppressing early treatment options and protocols because they want everything to be about the vaccine. And if you don't take the vaccine, you're somehow evil and you're killing people. And the fact is, if you've had COVID and recovered, you don't need the vaccine.
Yep. It adds an additional layer of protection, and that is absolutely your choice. But if you've recovered, you have immunity.
Yeah.
It's called natural immunity, and not enough is being talked about.
Right. In fact, vaccines can hurt people, which we will get into.
That is a huge
That's a whole episode. That'll be an early next year episode. Unfortunately, a bunch more people have been damaged by vaccines at that point because they're pushing the booster. And at some places, they're going to mandate the booster.
Yeah, I said this on our last podcast. Every single person I know who's gotten the booster has gotten very, very sick for 3 or 4 days. I mean, to the point where they can barely get out of bed. So what does that tell you?
Well, it tells you that their body's being attacked by a spike protein.
Yep, exactly. It probably didn't need it.
All right. Well, I was going to jump in on Epstein.
We have really 3 minutes.
3 minutes. There's no way we can cover.
If you wanted to talk about Epstein.
I will. Okay, I will say this. If you want to know about Ghislaine Maxwell's trial and the lack, because you can't read about it in the New York Times, you can't read about it in the Washington Post.
All of a sudden, everything went quiet, even on other alternative websites. And
it is crazy to me how much attention his story got when he got arrested in 2019, and then when he committed suicide. And for those listening, I am doing air quotes very vigorously because I don't think for a second that he committed suicide. Call me a conspiracy theorist, that's fine. He didn't commit suicide. I mean, there is evidence.
He has some very, very powerful friends who are being implicated in this in a way that everyone is holding their breath.
Well, and the problem is that he had cameras everywhere. So anyone who was there and did things that they shouldn't have done was susceptible of being exposed. And this cuts across.
Whatever happened to the painting of Bill Clinton in the dress? That's what I want to know.
I don't know.
Good question. Was it auctioned off?
Maybe.
Was it part of the estate sale?
Maybe. I don't know. But the fact is, this isn't
what happened to it?
This isn't a partisan issue because this cuts across both parties.
It
started
the laundry list
with Alex Acosta, who is the U.S. attorney appointed by Bush in Florida, who took a sex trafficker and pled down to a couple pretty minor charges.
Yeah.
He got, I think, 19 months in jail, which he served as work release for 13 of those months, and then he was released. Then Acosta becomes Trump's labor secretary. Epstein gets arrested in New York, and big uproar. Acosta resigns because people realize that there was some sweetheart deal. Then Epstein commits suicide, quote unquote, and here we go. I mean, there are Democrats implicated, Republicans implicated. No party declared implicated. Hollywood,
royal
family.
With pictures.
With pictures.
Yeah.
I have no recollection of that picture being taken. I don't know who this woman is.
Really? Well,
okay.
Prince Andrew.
Probably worst, denial ever.
When does Prince Andrew commit suicide?
Good question.
I mean, we're just going to go down the rabbit hole.
When is the Queen just going to say, screw this, I'm out?
Exactly.
I'm joining Philip in heaven. She's got to be so disgusted. Anyway, we're going to dive deep into Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Because the prosecution arrested, they didn't make a very good case. Who knows what's going to happen? At this point, I'd be surprised if she gets any kind of a severe sentence because the prosecution was so terrible. Because guess who the lead prosecutor was? None other than James Comey's daughter.
Yeah.
Tell me that's not a freaking...
It's all interrelated. It's all interconnected. And
conflict of interest.
It's really frightening.
Conflict of interest.
And scary.
I call conflict of interest. And with that, we'll wrap it up for now.
Yeah. And just remember, we are a podcast about faith, freedom, free enterprise, the founding principles of this great country.
And conspiracies.
Well,
and they're not theories if they're actual conspiracies.
Exactly.
Have a great one, guys.
God bless.
Take care.